And I will start recording now.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us today. Eric and I are excited to present to you. And so Eric's gonna be able to join us. He's just in the life of a school leader coming back from a fire inspection that just happened at one of our other campuses. So welcome to the life of a school leader. So I'm gonna kick off and then Eric's going to come in and chime in around the academic portion. So many of you might have met Eric and I know I've been at some of the last league meetings and at the Ed Clusters group. And so we're really excited to always talk about Brooklyn Lab and what we're doing in assessment. And today we're really going to take the focus on defining an expanded definition of student success. And so Brooklyn Lab is located in the heart of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle. I call it the Deadlands between the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge, but Eric yells at me for saying that. But we're located really in the heart of the urban core in downtown Brooklyn. It's actually where Eric and I are raising our son, Robert, who's right there in the Mickey Mouse hat. And these are some of our lab scholars. So our scholars are come to us in the 6th grade. Many of them have been least well served by other educational institutions. And just for some context in New York right now, in and around the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, more than 22,000 new housing units have been built in the last 4 years and no new schools. And so what's really challenging about that context is that we have to serve students who are coming from in and around downtown Brooklyn, but also students who are coming from schools that are further afield. And so when we get them in 6th grade, our students are at different grade levels. And so Innovate EDU is the sister organization of Brooklyn Lab, and we're really focused on taking the work that we're doing at Brooklyn Lab, whether it's our fellowship program, work we're doing on interoperability, or the work that we're doing with Cortex and bringing it to other school districts. And we're really proud that 75% of the 7,500 users that are using Cortex, which is what we're going to talk about today, are district schools around the country who are from big districts like Boston Public Schools to smaller districts like Central Falls and Rhode Island. And so we know that our friends in districts are facing a lot of the same challenges that we are facing here in the charter sector, increased opportunity to use digital assessments, the increased opportunity to be one-to-one, particularly at the middle or high school level, and the increased call from parents to do that. And then finally, the ability to make data usable so that we can serve, inform, enhance teaching and learning. And so our students come from many different walks of life. I think something that's very remarkable about Brooklyn Lab is that more than 30% of our students are students who we define as complex learners. So students who are classified as SPED learners. And so we prize an inclusion model at Brooklyn Lab, which means that our human capital model is often relies on different types of learning experiences with an orchestra, an educational orchestra of folks who are really needing to be playing from the same songbook, but are definitely playing different instruments. And so you can see that even amongst our students who we define as complex learners, they have multiple things going on. Sometimes academic, sometimes behavior, definitely often a combination of both. And one of the things that we really work on is a model of personalization that's deeply embedded in formative assessment data, and using formative assessment data to rapidly recuperate and fill those gaps, but at the same time make sure that we're able to provide extension content for our students in a really meaningful way. And so I think one of the things that has been such a blessing for Eric and I has been our consistent track record in academics, which Eric is going to talk about now. He has to just unmute himself.
we have a deep belief in assessment for learning because we believe that it ultimately allows us to recuperate and accelerate and tailor learning experiences to meet the needs of young people in a way that generates academic and social and emotional growth that is kind of substantial and happens for students that are high in a domain or behind grade level in a domain. And ultimately, think that one of the most important kind of features of a next generation learning context is the ability to kind of understand the relationship between habits of success, wayfinding ability, creative know-how, kind of the academic growth that you might experience in, say NWE MAP, and then the kind of end of year absolute proficiency or performance that you see in a Common Core, aligned state exam. We're particularly proud of the amount of growth that our scholars have. So here the x-axis is the percentage of students who are meeting their goal, for a kind of year of growth. And that's the y-axis. The x-axis is functionally kind of a mean conditional growth percentile. So how much growth are lab scholars seeing compared to other very high growth contexts. The rest of the distribution is kind of the highest performing schools in the Charter School Growth Fund portfolio and new schools portfolios. So functionally kind of, high growth context, how do we compare? And so what that kind of looks like in aggregate is that we're seeing over 3 years of growth across kind of NWA, MAP, reading, and writing for every year that scholars are with us. And what's exciting is that actually for 7th graders, that's kind of accelerated. So the 6th graders see a certain amount of growth. And then for our 7th graders, they see kind of even more than that and more than the 3 years.
So people often ask us, how does that happen? And so we think it really centers around these 3 key principles, which is an approach to positive youth development, focusing on mastery of rigorous standards, and a laser focus on personalization. And we believe that these pieces are the 4 big drivers of our academic success. And so first is, and we're going to talk about that through the lens of Cortex. So first is our human capital strategy. So in this picture, you see our staff, some of our staff for this year, and you see staff that is playing in lots of different roles. Some are on our operations team. Some folks are a co-teacher. Others are a SPED coordinator. Others are fellows, 1 year teaching residents who take a public service fellowship and lead small group tutoring. So when a young person is at Brooklyn Lab, they're going through 3 really different learning experiences. The first is around remediation practice and reinforcement with our lab tutors. The second is around direct instruction with our master teachers, often in a co-taught context. And the third is really around individual independent work on digital courseware. And there's some great videos on the Innovate EDU lab website, which can give you an idea of what this actually looks like in practice. What's really important is if you're going through all these different learning experiences is to have data that's really focused on mastery of rigorous standards. And this belief of with the Common Core and what's happened in bringing state standards to a simple or more refined framework, how do you have standards flow together with assessments and make sure those instructional experiences are living up to those other 2 points of the triangle? And so we use Cortex in order to provide that map or that central point so that teachers understand about mastery, and not just if a student has mastered, but how they have mastered. So while complex texts are really, really important to us and a variety of texts are very important to us, it's also if a student is showing proficiency on something like the Gettysburg Address, or if they're really turned on by something like what is a black hole. Students love passion-driven learning. And so teachers having insight on what it looks like to discover and unlock the passions for our students are really important for our growth. And we do this by looking at a really simple set of reports: yellow for near mastery, green for mastery, and red for no mastery. And this is a visualization of something that Eric can pull up in a course across his entire school, and has the ability to see, not just by assignment, but also by standard, whether or not the whole school is falling down or standing up. But we can also see data on an individual student level. And that's really important to our third key driver, which is personalization. And we believe in a really expanded definition of personalization. So I think it's easy to conflate the word personalization with technology, but we really believe it's a diversity of different approaches to meet every student where they are. And at the foundation of that is the relationship. How are you able to have a direct interaction one-to-one with a student, while at the same time having something that keeps the rest of your students on track? And so this is actually a snapshot of one of our 7th grade playlists that lives in Cortex. And as you can see, students are progressing through the standards, and they're able to access that content at any time. That same consistent visualization around data, this yellow, green, and red, yellow for near mastery, green for mastery, and red for no mastery, is really helpful in explaining data so that our students understand it and become advocates for their own learning, for parents to understand that and know how to help hold their students accountable, and for our teachers to take a simple glance or to dig deeper and understand exactly where a student is on a competency progression. And so you can see that one of the things in Cortex that allows us to do that is to pull together learning objects from all different types of vendors, from Woot Math to Khan Academy to Newsy LA to 10 Marks to Big History to Illuminate. We're able to have all those pieces of data flow directly into Cortex so that we're able to see that data in one place in a common visualization. And so that piece around data for personalization lives side by side with all these other pieces, from art and dance movement therapy to speech to integrated co-teaching. And folks who are in that complex educational orchestra have access to a student's assessment data so that they're able to understand how a student is doing in their academic classes, but also how they're doing in our other activities that really focus on positive youth development. So things like a model we're pioneering with Alpha called Personalized Leadership Training, which focuses on building specific competencies using the My Ways framework as a way to drive things like speaking to be heard, emptying your cup, persistence, and building helpful habits. And because we're able to align those side by side with things like the Common Core standards, teachers are actually able to assess students side by side with a core academic competency in a way that really underlines expanding the definition of what students are successful at. So the ability to work in multifunctional teams is as valued as the ability to understand foundational literacies. We also are able to assess and point out learnings and assessment from our after-school program. That's been really impactful in us shaping the types of learning experiences that we then carry over into curricular time blocks. So robotics is a great example of this, something that's incredibly popular for the last 2 years with our students. And so we had 2 amazing entrepreneurial teachers who decided that they were going to embed robotics in the core 6th grade math curriculum on Wednesdays in order to drive computational thinking and inquiry. And we partnered with NYU Poly to do that. And those partnerships with youth serving nonprofits, employees, and universities mean that we have an opportunity to capture all those different types of data and also give that data back to our partners, making Brooklyn and the wider New York City area really a place where our students have access to tons of different learning opportunities that feed into this expanded definition of student success. I mentioned the My Ways framework before, and we spent a lot of time this year honing the My Ways framework, embedding it into our system, and making sure that there are meaningful experiences for our students that don't just think about content knowledge, but really think about these other 3 key areas and value them at the same time. And so you can see that we've actually built playlists around those competencies and behaviors, and that students progress through them much like they do every single day with a math playlist. And that we've created tools within Cortex like the agenda book to really allow students to executive manage their time and work on key executive functioning skills, goal setting, and wayfinding around specific things like being on time to class. And all these equations assignments and of mice and men, that all comes from playlists. So students are both able to coach themselves and their peers, as well as advisory teachers are able to look comprehensively across an entire student's assessment data, formative assessment data, as well as what they have due, and be able to coach them. And so we built Cortex here at Brooklyn Lab because we really needed something that was different, that tackled both operational challenges in data flow, but also instructional challenges, that was focused on student-centered mastery and was able to help our students become advocates for what they needed to know. And so we've really worked hard to create a custom interface within Cortex that allows any assignment in any session or any section, so any small group, to be aligned within the gradebook and to be aligned within the student's learning experience. And so I'm just gonna take a brief minute and show you what that looks like live. You should be seeing it right now. So you can see that you can assess assignments and assessments on that same framework. We've built this technology in line with the EdFi Alliance and the EdFi Data Standard in Cortex, which means now that this piece around an expanded definition of student success and the My Ways framework has been rolled into a data standard that's in use by 32 states, soon to be 33. So you can see a lot of our partners at Innovate EDU, including Brooklyn Lab, we're growing with Cortex, and we're really excited to be in a conversation with other schools and other districts on the forefront of assessment, not just if you're a user of Cortex, but really if you're really curious about how to drive formative assessment forward, how we can continually evolve this expanded definition of student success. So this is where we are right now. We are right about iteration 8, and so all those pieces will come together in the fall for the launch of version 4 of Cortex. So that's everything that Eric and I wanted to share today very quickly with you as a way to give you an idea of what we're doing in formative assessment and how we bring it all together at Brooklyn Lab.
Thank you. I think we have a couple questions in the chat box. One from Eric Williams, and the question is, what are you most proud of in terms of increasing the extent to which teachers effectively use data to inform the design of learning experiences? And what is your biggest challenge in increasing the extent to which teachers use data to design learning experiences?
Yeah, we have both success and challenge. So Eric's going to take that because he leads the instructional leadership team at Brooklyn Lab.
I think what's most important about the framework that Erin just laid out is that what we're ultimately trying to accomplish is that students take increasing ownership and responsibility for, and increasing kind of pride in the generation of evidence that can support an assessment claim, or evidence of learning and growth that can support a claim around the range of things that will help a young person in their transition to adult life. And so some of those things are things that as a society we test a tremendous amount and potentially too much, including how effective are you in your kind of writing ability, and your ability to do close reading, and your ability to do grade level mathematics. But most schools, but many of the other things in the kind of other three quadrants of My Ways, like the kind of habits of success, or the creative know-how, the collaboration and communication stuff, or the wayfinding ability, are tremendously important to what our kind of goals as educators are. I think there are people who have run kind of data-driven instruction systems where data informs the design of learning experiences, kind of before Brooklyn Lab came on the scene. I think it's tremendously powerful not to just buy into the curious separation between kind of work on foundational literacies or kind of fundamental kind of knowledge, on the one hand, and those other things like, are you a generous collaborator? Are you a kind of creative thinker in an uncertain world? Those kind of things that we know matter for transition to adult life. But that aren't going to be on the end of your exam. And too often at schools, we ask educators to either focus on core academics and generate evidence that students are growing or are achieving proficiency, or to focus on the social emotional stuff, or the other three quadrants in the MyWeb framework. I think what Cortex has done to create kind of a system for tagging one learning experience to multiple standards. So maybe a habits of success plus a like, are you persistent? Plus, are you kind of a good listener on a team? Plus, are you learning to write a research paper that makes an argument grounded in evidence? To have those three claims, and let's say it's a team project and one person, on the team is tagged to those three standards, another member of the team who's sitting in a different seat could be tagged to a totally different set of standards. And so that kind of recognition that evidence of learning and evidence to make assessment claims kind of happens during the course of learning experiences, and that we need to kind of empower educators to think about the range of experiences that they're designing, and then to engage young people in kind of competency or mastery-based conversations kind of based on what they're seeing. It's both the kind of biggest growth point. I also think it's the kind of biggest challenge, like how to do work that actually privileges things like generous collaboration in a world where schools and school systems are really only good at building adult systems by and large for things like math proficiency, where we have professional development and coaching feedback and kind of rubrics and assessing, interim assessments that are aligned to the summative, where we tend to be good at those things in core academic domains and then struggle with how to build adult systems in these other domains that we know matter. I'm tremendously proud of the work Cortex does to open up conversations around adult academic systems targeted towards a broader set of learning goals.
Yeah, and I would just chime in there that I think our greatest challenge is adults and training adults to embrace and look at data in a way that feels meaningful. And we spend a lot of time scaling up through our fellowship and scaling up in August Academy with our teachers, in creating model teacher frameworks for looking at data, having dedicated time for data days during our school year where we actually do a deep dive into the data. We set time apart from when scholars are in the building. And so I think adults is often the hardest challenge to both untrain folks or retrain them is probably a better word, to think about a multidimensional framework for formative assessment, but also it's been one of our greatest successes. And then I would say, like, for me, there's no prouder moment than when we have a visitor on a tour at Brooklyn Lab, and it happens all the time. And a student comes up and introduces themselves to a visitor and very clearly and proudly says, "Hi, my name is Corey, and I'm in 7th grade, but I read at a 4th grade level, and my math scores are at the 6th grade. So this year I have to make 2 years of reading growth, and next year I'll need to make 2 years of reading growth to be on grade level. And, I have to make about half a year or about a year if I want to sit for the Algebra 1 Regents in 8th grade." And just having students own their own data, be advocates for themselves, and have a guidepost to where they need to go is incredibly powerful. Because I don't know what the jobs of tomorrow are, but I know that if students can find their way and understand what they need to know, that's a skill that we need to teach all students.
Great. I think there is another question in the chat box from Chris. How much of this data is qualitative in nature, and how would you describe that data?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that is very powerful about the the EDI Data Standard, as it relates to kind of next generation models of assessment, is that it kind of was designed to account for a lot of different structures of data. So sometimes you'll have an A, B, C, D, F standard. Sometimes you'll have a quiz that has 27 questions and 24 out of 27 is mastery, and 21 out of 27 is kind of near mastery, and below that it's not. Sometimes you'll have a rubric that both kind of evaluates the effort that young people put into preparing a personal essay or to preparing a written argument, as well as the strength of their oral defense. Sometimes you'll be grading a math standard, both a math question, both for accuracy as well as for a standard for mathematical practice. A lot of times you want to kind of put more kind of qualitative kind of annotation or feedback, but also give a student a kind of sense of what the trajectory, whether they're on track or not, is. And you need to ultimately have, in order to support next generation learning or personalization, you need to have a kind of a system that is usable and workable. So, i.e., has kind of base level claims around kind of mastery, near mastery, not near mastery. So green, yellow, red, but that also, as you kind of dig in and look at kind of item level analysis, either allows you to kind of link to the original artifact, like here's the the kind of recording of a student kind of performing that musical performance. So here is the kind of data visualization that the student prepared that I'm grading. So you can kind of link straight through to the work itself or to the item that is being assessed. Or link through to the rubric plus the notes. That you kind of want the messiness of kind of data that reflects the kind of effort and the kind of process of learning on the one hand. On the other hand, you need there to be some kind of relevance and comparability between particular projects as they aggregate up over a term, to kind of culminate in a grade or culminate in, whatever the kind of form of feedback is. And one of the things that kind of I think is a persistent challenge is the desire to tell a growth story while telling a story that also speaks to kind of effort and habits, practices that you're seeing, while also telling a story about absolute performance. And a lot of times those stories are in conflict. You could have a student who's growing tremendously, but who isn't always showing the kind of habits that you would want to see and isn't yet performing on grade level. And you need to have a kind of ability to communicate around mastery in a way that is honest and tells a clear story to teachers and the parents on the one hand, and on the other hand, be able to functionally have a bunch of different structures of data that then you have weighting. So for my math teachers, they might really care about the recency of a student's ability to demonstrate mastery on a particular question, whereas for a kind of ELA teacher, for a kind of, well, let's say for a science teacher, they might want to kind of see evidence about the actual data that is being crunched by students as they analyze the results from a particular lab. And you kind of need to be flexible enough to accommodate a lot of different structures of evidence of work.
Yeah, and I think there's places in the agenda and other places when it comes to comments where we're capturing a lot of the conversational sharing between teachers and students, both from an action-oriented goal coaching perspective, but also the foundation of the data, as Eric was talking about, really does help us make some choices around interventions as well as small groupings that happen in child study teams. And I think the fact of the matter is, like, technology is never going to replace a great teacher. We should stop thinking that it will. That great teachers are needed every day, single day, and that they're human beings are the thing that move the needle for human beings. And I'm a technologist, and I say that. And so we need to take the lift away from our teachers in doing the things that are easy to do, in the things that we could easily cross off the list, things that are machine readable, like formative assessment scores, an 8 out of 10. When I see teachers downloading data into multiple spreadsheets and then translating it into a grade book from 10 different pieces of courseware that they want to use in their classroom because it drives student engagement, but also because it allows them to differentiate. I understand that a teacher's doing that on their Sunday. And I think we need to be committed to giving our teachers their Sundays back, and to letting the qualitative data really be the thing that happens in grade level team meetings, be the things that happen in child study teams, be the interaction between students and teachers, rather than it just being driven by this rigid frame of you're an 8 out of 10. That's easy to work with students on. The next level, this expanded definition of student success, is having that next question on how do you get there? What's impeding you? Why is it impeding you? Is there something else we need to tackle in terms of childhood trauma? Is there something else that's going on in your wider life? And so I think our goal when it comes to building technology at Innovate EDU and at Brooklyn Lab is to eliminate that first layer, just the what is happening. Next, we need to talk about the why and the how it's happening. Does that make sense?
This is a good note to say that everyone should be, we can turn this into a conversation. Everyone has the ability to speak, I believe, unless you've muted yourself. Would love any other questions that didn't show up in the chat box now.
Hey, Erin and Eric, this is Eric Gunderson at Pascack Valley, across the river from you guys in Jersey.
Yeah.
Find out how your approach is going to, if I understand it correctly, you have 2 middle schools right now?
Yep.
Right? And then you're opening up a high school. How are you going to, or are you going to adjust any of these practices for the high school environment?
Yeah, so I'll start first with we're actually opening 2 high schools next year, not just one, which is even more scary. But I told you about the demand for schools in downtown Brooklyn and the need to expand the number of available seats. So we just have an overwhelming demand for Brooklyn Lab seats. You know, I think this is actually something organizationally we are both incredibly conscious of and we're deeply wrestling with, which is the developmentally appropriate approach to students, both making the transition into driving their own learning, but also how we're going to think about the human capital that is in Brooklyn Lab high schools. And so part of that is driven by where our students get to, as Eric shared, in 7th and 8th grade, that they're largely on grade level by the time they're sitting with us in 7th and 8th grade. We are committed to backfilling, so that means that we'll have some students who come to us fresh out of 9th grade, fresh out of 10th grade, and so we'll need to make some approaches in remediation. Not everyone's going to get over the finish line to grade level this year. But one thing we're really tackling with right now is how we not just master remediation and small group instruction to address remediation, but how we do it for extension work. So here's some of the things we're trying right now in the 8th grade. One is a partnership with the College Board, in which we're rethinking, alongside the College Board, the assessment framework for AP. So we're rigorously in a debate with them right now, and they're going to have Lab be their field school around what a reframe of assessment looks like. And so what's on the table right now is very similar to what's going on in AP Seminar, which is something we're doing in the 8th grade right now, which is only 40% of the grade in the AP assessment will be the summative end of the year exam, and that the other 60% of the final score that the College Board gives will be around individual and team-based projects. So that's a huge flipping of the script for AP and something we're really excited to work on. But we're just beginning that work. I think another big piece is we're going to not have fellows leading small group tutoring in the high school. Instead, we're going to focus on a Foundations of Leadership class, and we're going to be focusing on the ability to really be trajectory, sort of like changing trajectory opportunities when it comes to internships and externships, and getting our students out more into the community so that they're having more project-based and experiential-based learning alongside a really rigorous college framework. And so that focus on college prep, that focus on a reimagined framework for AP assessment alongside the College Board are just two examples, I think, of how the model will shift into high school. And I'm sure Eric has many more that he can chime in with now.
Yeah, so functionally, we are running a very, in middle school, we've been running a kind of NWE math plus, with, functionally kind of a PARCA line, kind of, New York State specific, kind of summative assessment that states required at the end of the year, and then run interim assessments and kind of more formative work and kind of unit, homework, quiz stuff that's kind of in line with Common Core reading and writing standards and math standards, but kind of is disciplinary specific. And, then kind of, in addition, running a kind of My Ways aligned social emotional kind of assessment framework or performance framework. At the high school level, we're pivoting to, functionally redesigned SAT as the suite that kind of gives us, kind of growth information year to year, with an end of course framework at the end of courses that's ultimately kind of aligned to first the pre-AP modules and then the advanced placement exams. We, like Erin said, has kind of embraced the more process-based exams that are coming out, of the College Board, including the kind of AP seminar, AP research, culminating in the kind of AP capstone diploma, which give kind of rubrics that allow us to, in October or in February, be kind of evaluating papers and group research and presentations in a way that kind of gives us kind of some information about the rigor bar, but also lets us to kind of tackle interest-driven and passion-driven applied research and kind of projects that have an expedition component. So that's kind of what we're doing on the academic side of the house. On the kind of the other three quadrants of My Ways, we are very focused on we kind of decomposed the set of goals we have around generous collaborators or kind of creative thinkers in an uncertain world, or lifelong learners, and kind of built them into a set of measures and then kind of metrics around kind of self-awareness, social negotiation, self-management, etc. That are kind of descending the ladder of abstraction from say a My Way level of granularity to a specificity that allows us to to kind of begin to operationalize how we see young people growing. And as we talked about before, the goal is ultimately to have scholars owning their data, reflecting on what's working and not working about their practices and their kind of dispositions today, given what their goals are and the kind of credible pathway to adult life that they're trying to expose.
And we're super open source, as many people know. So we're excited to share both our what will be inevitable failures with the rest of the world as we embark on this journey. I think throughout our mission, we've been really focused on not just sharing where we're successful, but also where it's been really, really hard. And I think we're excited about being able to do this work, but we also understand that it's vanguard work and that we're going to get some bumps and some bruises along the way. So check back with us in a year, Eric, and I'm sure I'll lament the 95 hypotheses that we got wrong, which sure. I always think about when I talk about our middle school.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Who else has questions? I think we have time for one or two more. Okay. All right. Thank you, Erin and Eric. And so if you all see this document that I think is shared, again, please check out that USA Today coverage And if there's any other resources, Erin and Eric, that you want to share that maybe you thought of on this call, I'd love to share it with the group at large.
Great. We'll send you a couple things.
Great. And I will send out this recording to those who are on the call and who are off the call, and we'll put together a blog post and we'll share that again at the league meeting. Just a couple items of housekeeping before we wrap up. Again, like I mentioned, the first series of these little pieces that we're sharing will go out tomorrow, so on Mineola, so I'll share that as well. Really excited to plug our next webinar on April 19th that Amy McCammons, are you on this call? I think so. We'll be leading from Cajon Valley next month on the 19th at 1 p.m., so hope to see a lot of you there. And at the league meeting, we're going to have a brief working group share out of the work that all of the working groups have completed between the fall meeting and the spring meeting. So we're going to need a volunteer to get up in front of the league and kind of talk about the webinars that we've gone through so far. So send me an email if you'd be interested in doing that, or I will be volunteering somebody. Thank you in advance. And as we are trying to figure these out, I put a post-meeting survey link in the document, so it'd be really, really helpful if you could complete that quickly so we can continue making these better and better. So snaps for Erin and Eric for such a wonderful presentation today. And if anybody else has any items of business right now, I will open the floor, and if not, we'll close out. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Great
Bye.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.